Hello,
Oh,
welcome to the Let's Talk Kids Health Facebook Live Show, episode 40. I'm Dr. Narissa Bauer, your host. I'm a behavioral pediatrician and blogger of Let's Talk Kids Health. As you know, the concept of this show is to share information about behavioral health, parenting, and family wellness. Each week, I plan to bring you topics and guests to help me advance this mission so that we can all talk together. Now, let us know that you're here by commenting, asking questions, and liking at any time. And in a little bit, your questions will be asked of my guest. The replay will be immediately available after we end the broadcast, so please share this episode with anyone you think who could benefit because, sharing is caring. And if you don't want to miss future episodes or maybe check out my past ones, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer, MD, and follow my blog Facebook page, Let's Talk Kids Health. All right. So now on to this week's guest. Let's welcome Dr. Bob Saul. He is a pediatrician and medical geneticist with over 45 years of experience and currently serves as the president of the South Carolina chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. He has also been an educator and an administrator. Most recently, he is an author with a passion for parenting advice, children's advocacy, and community involvement. I am so honored to have you here again with me, Dr. Saul. Thank you.
it's my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. And for those of you who have been following along, we actually just read Dr. Saul's book, and he did another Facebook Live with the readers. So we will be talking about this book shortly. So I thought, maybe to kick us off, I was going to just ask you, how did you get involved in the field of community pediatrics and that were different from medicine?
Yeah, I when I finished my training in 1979 in pediatrics and then got medical genetics, I went full force into medicine with trying to be the best darn doctor I could be, and very much involved with everything I could be and learning everything and trying to really keep up on everything. But after about 14 years, I felt like I wasn't participating and wasn't contributing to my community like I should.
Mm.
So I heard a healthcare futurist talk in 1993, 12 words that have had a profound impact on me going forward. For anything that happens in your community, I am the problem, I am the solution, I am the resource. Now that really took me a while to internalize that, but what it told me was that anything that's happening, I need to take personal ownership in it. It's not their problem, it's my problem.
Hmm.
And to be part of the solution, I need to devote my resources to it. So I got really excited after a while, went to several of the community leaders that put me in. I really want to get involved and do what I can to make a difference. And then 6 years later, two teenagers walked into a high school in Littleton, Colorado, massacred 13 people and killed themselves. I was devastated.
Yeah.
I went to medical school in Colorado, but I had, other than that geographic relationship, I had no specific ties to this community. But it's just, what have I done to make a difference to make sure it couldn't happen? The answer was not enough. Could it happen in my community? Yes, it could. So I pivoted and changed a little there and sat down, put pen to paper. Back then, we used to do that, and came up with what I considered to be the 5 steps to community improvement.
Hmm.
Because to me, this whole problem happened because of our tolerance of hate, our inability to reconcile differences. And so these 5 steps sort of took over, and I wrote over 160 op-ed articles for the local newspaper over 12 to 13 years.
Wow.
And that sort of is the basis for what I got going in terms of then the conscious parenting. But if I could just briefly go over the 5 steps with you.
That would be great.
Okay, well, the first one was learn to be the best parent you could be. Uh, and I chose those words carefully because life is a lifelong learning experience. You're always learning. And not everyone has the capability of being as intentional and being as I think maybe a parent should be. So yeah, you always got to be willing to learn, and be receptive to learning. The best parent you can be. not everyone has the same abilities. Not everyone has the same circumstances. Some might be more educationally challenged. Some might be socioeconomic. There might be some mental health challenges. There might be a variety of issues. So my job is not to, though early in my career I thought it was. Early in my career, I oftentimes told people what they should be doing. I realize now my job is to enable them, is to empower them. And
Mhm.
in many ways, sometimes it's just to gently peek behind the curtain and see how I can help them going forward. And so that was very important as the first step, parenting. But parenting is, as we all know, is so many different things going on at the same time.
Yes.
Uh, Step number two was get involved.
Uh-huh.
Because you need to be a positive example. You need to do things in your community. Step number three was stay involved, which I think is separate from getting involved. When you get involved, you're not going to stay involved with the same thing all the time. I mean, you're not going to be a Cub Scout leader for 20 years, uh, but you need to stay involved.
Right.
So you need to shift and pivot with that. The fourth step was probably the most obvious, but very difficult in our divisive society: love for others.
Yep.
Um, I don't know
Mhm.
how we've lost track of that, but indeed we have in many ways, unfortunately. And the fifth one I think is the most difficult is forgiveness. That is learning how to forgive, learning how to forgive yourself, learning how to forgive others, and do it now
Mm.
was a crucial step. And I've been learning about forgiveness. I've been on a real forgiveness journey for myself for the last almost 30 years now, trying to understand what this is all about. Uh, Great little book called Tuesdays with Maury. And in that book, one of all the pearls, the one that stuck with me the most is Maury Schwartz's understanding of forgiveness. You
Mhm.
have to forgive yourself first, whether
Yeah.
for what you're thinking, for what you're not doing, for what you're doing. Then you need to extend forgiveness to others, and then do it now.
Yeah, I mean, that is so true, and, even though you wrote those 5 principles years ago, I feel like those are, standing the test of time. I mean, I think, especially today, and like you said, in today's society, I think this is such an important, message to talk about. I mean, can we transition then? Because I know that, the topic today, we were gonna talk about citizenship. And what does it mean to raise our children to be good citizens?
I think that's crucial, and I think
Mhm.
that's in many ways we've lost track of that in our society. Sometimes we sort of empathize or we emphasize that we want our children to be happy, and yes, we do,
Mhm.
but we don't want them to be selfishly happy. When my parents divorced when I was young, I remember my mother, I'm sure out of guilt, saying, "Bob, I just want you to be happy. I just want you to be happy." Um, And I could have selfishly pursued whatever I wanted to on that premise. I mean, but that's not what she really meant. And fortunately for me, she set the positive example that of being a good citizen. Citizens care for each other. Citizens care about each other. Citizens care. Citizens take care of each other. Citizens empathize for others. And we've lost track of that in our society. So I think raising children to be good citizens is the hallmark of what parenting should be. And that's a little simplistic, I understand. But I really think if you raise your children to be good citizens, happiness is a secondary positive effect.
Mm.
And that's sort of so I sort of became on this journey again. When I started writing this, I really didn't understand as much about citizenship as I do now. And that's why my first book was called My Children's Children: Raising Young Citizens in the Age of Columbine, because that's
Mhm.
what I think we need to be doing.
Yeah, and I guess can you maybe expand a little bit more on that and, how to do that when it comes to parenting? I mean, what is the goal of parenting then?
Well, I think and that's sort of my last book then in the whole issue of conscious parenting.
Mhm.
Um, Let me give a little background to that if I could. When I took a leadership training late in my career, which I sort of held my nose that I was gonna have to do that, but I learned something. You're never too old to learn. I found that out. And in that leadership training, that was called conscious leadership.
Uh-huh.
And it was important for you as a leader to be conscious of where you were. And they defined a line. When you were above the line, you were open, you're receptive, you're ready to learn. When you're below the line, you're closed, you're defensive, and you're always right.
Mm.
And as humans, we're going to be above and below the line. The point is just being conscious about where you are. And an example is if you and I have been in that meeting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon where we're silently sitting there going, this is the most boring meeting I have ever been in. When's this thing going to be over? Now, if you're practicing conscious leadership, you're saying, okay, I'm below the line. Now you can say, I'm just going to stay below the line until this meeting's over.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're conscious about it, you might say, okay, I need to be more engaged. I need to change my focus here. I need to be more receptive. I need to be more ready to learn. So you can shift from below the line to above the line. I think
Mm-hmm.
that same line holds for parenting. And I've labeled it the parental awareness threshold. When you're above the parental awareness threshold, you're open, you're receptive, you're ready to learn, you're ready to listen to your children, you're ready to engage. When you're below the parental awareness threshold, you're closed, you're defensive because I said so, and I'm the parent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we're all going to be above and below the line. That's that's the whole parenting journey. And believe me, I've been below the line more often than I'd like to admit, but that happens. The point is now, I think, is to be conscious of that. And in the moment, if you can change, and at least in retrospect, if you realize, that didn't go well,
Yep.
that when I had that confrontation about eating peas, I don't know why the child didn't understand why I think she should eat peas. And so then in retrospect, you say, okay, what could I have done differently there? How could I have been more receptive? How could I be more understanding of where they are instead of just saying, because I'm the parent, you'll eat these darn peas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's that consciousness, the awareness of where you are, and to sort of make that pivot, if you will, from below the parental awareness threshold to above, I think sort of requires 3 steps, and they're fairly intuitive, but sometimes it's hard in the emotions. Pause,
Mm-hmm.
assess where you are, and then choose.
Mm-hmm.
You might you might choose the wrong response. Uh, but that's the whole point of pausing and trying to make a difference. But each encounter with your child each one is unique.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could in the book I have oodles of examples from birth to teen years, and each child is unique, and each interaction is unique. When somebody comes home, either their mom or dad comes home at 6 o'clock, and the 1-year-old's throwing the peas on the floor, the arriving parent might think it's really cute. The parent that's been there all day might think, I can't take this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and why? Because it might be their emotional state at the time. It might be because their 4-year-old's causing them fits. It might be because their mother is very sick or has there's so many different things. So each interaction is unique because 2 days later there might be a very different reaction to the pea throwing.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to each time there is no set response, I think, for every interaction with a child. And some parents might say, "Oh my gosh, how could that be?" But that's the whole point of parenting is learning how to make a difference in your child's life.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I think what that in summary, for people watching or listening, it means that there's always another day. Kids are resilient. They're going to test those boundaries, and we have the ability to change our responses in that unique situation and recognize that we have to have self-compassion for ourselves too. And that going back to that whole forgiveness that you had said, like if I kind of am below the line and then can kind of step back afterwards and be like, "Oh, I really did not handle that well." First of all, like acknowledging that and then, making that conscious effort to even apologize to your child. That's okay. So in your paradigm, I mean, I think that's the beauty of this. It's so simple, but yet it can have such profound impact on the quality of your interactions with your children.
A specific example of that, my youngest is now age 31, but when he was about 7 or 8,
Uh-huh.
one night he did something that I thought was very wrong, and I yelled at him.
Mhm.
Immediately regretted that. He just turned into a puddle. My wife got mad at me for yelling, and we went into that family meltdown mode for where nobody talks. Everyone just sort of walks by each other with a not looking. And that went on for about 2 hours until it was time for bed. And I laid down with my son, said, "Son, bedtime." I said, "Son, I'm so sorry. You did something I think was wrong, but my response was totally inappropriate, and I want to apologize.
Mhm.
Uh, I really want you to know that I did wrong, and I need to do better going forward. I think you need to do better also going forward, but let's work on this." And he finally said, "Dad, would you be quiet?" And I said, "Why? Why?" He said, "I hate it when you're nice." So I think, and I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but I think I understood a little bit about this conscious parenting even before I wrote the book, uh, decades prior. But I think it's, and the whole point, like you said, in terms of being able to think back, "Oh, that didn't go so well. How could I change?" You really sort of need a trusted partner, whether
Mhm.
that's your spouse, your pastor, your best friend, your sibling, your parents, or whatever. Somebody that you can really talk to and say, "This is what happened the other night, the other day. This is what I did. It did not go well. What do you think?" They might not have all the answers, but just that interaction and that sharing of solutions together can be quite helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's kind of one of those things that if you don't know and you don't have that awareness, and maybe this is just how your childhood was, so you're sort of repeating that, but sometimes it, like you said, it's so helpful to just have that trusted person, to have that sounding board, because it doesn't innate, like, it might not feel right, but you're not quite sure then what to do. And so having a trusted person to be able to help think through, okay, well, let's think about that, right? And having that honest conversation is really helpful.
And one of the most trusted people are sitting in front of the audience right now, pediatricians.
Pediatricians, yes. We love to talk about this stuff, I
Um,
mean, I think it's
and
important.
it's never a quick discussion. I
No.
mean, when we see it, when we see something go off the rails in the office, and we try to address it, we recognize it's not something we can rectify in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But
Mhm.
the whole point is setting up a trusted relationship over time, where you can continue to work on that information and massage the message over time to be helpful to the family, instead of just as I did early in my career, "This is what you need to do."
Yeah, and I think that kind of piggybacking to that, I think it also, again, this paradigm is flexible, it's dynamic, but it also inherently respects the people's values and their culture. Again, because we're not coming into that interaction saying, "I'm the doctor, this is how it should be done." I mean, I think it's that relationship building and learning about each other and kind of having that meaningful interchange and learning experience together, how we can kind of have that outcome that we want. It's all part of connecting and talking with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So but I'm thinking about, I've had some conversations, and I love your sort of your thoughts on this, is like, isn't parenting though an innate ability, right? I mean, yeah, how do parents actually, if they're sitting here thinking about this, or they might have been thinking about an exchange that they had with their child that they're not proud of, but yet they don't know what to do? Like, what sort of advice would you have for them?
Well, first off, I don't think parenting is an innate ability in today's society.
Yes.
Things and one might say, "Well, we've been doing it for centuries, millennia." Yes, but in today's society, with all the technology and social media and everything else, there's so many complex features that I don't think it's an innate ability. I think you need a map. You need help along the way. You need to unfold the map, not just use the GPS on your phone. You need to unfold the map and look at the routes and try to figure out how to get from A to B, recognizing that you're going to have to take Highway 50 over this way before you can get over there, because that's what's going to happen. And then there's going to be they're going to be paving Highway 50, so you're going to have to get off the road. The same sort of thing happens with parenting. And so I think, I'd like to think that, there's lots of different books on parenting. I don't think there is one single how-to book on parenting.
Mm-hmm.
I particularly like my book, obviously selfishly, because it just provides a paradigm, I think, that people can get a good understanding. And I have a lot of resources in the back if they want more. It's not the kind of book where you're going to pick it up and say, how do I handle a temper tantrum? There's a little bit of that, but it's the whole concept of how do I deal with my child? How do we be more understanding and receptive? But the big thing is, listen to your child. Your child can teach you so much. To just say, I'm the parent and this is the way it is, robs the child of their decency, I think. Now, children are going to make plenty of mistakes, but if parents don't think they make plenty of mistakes, they're turning a blind eye. So it really is a learning experience. And in medical school and in college, we learned about chemical reactions, and we talked about an equilibrium. Things went one way, and then things went the other way. I think parenting is very similar. Sometimes all the chemical reaction goes this way. Sometimes it goes this way. Sometimes it sort of meets in the middle. Same thing happening with parenting, because there's so many unique challenges along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you, I have it right here. So Conscious Parenting, great book. You should go to your library or go to Amazon or Dr. Saul's website and get a copy. Not that long, so it's doable. And again, really practical too. And I think it's one of those that makes you stop and think about and reflect on what you're reading, and it's again just a nice paradigm or roadmap to speak, so to speak, that it's really a nice way to sort of think about parenting because it's an easy concept. I love that about the above and below the line, and then pausing, assessing, and choosing. So, right, it's really nice.
And again, in the book, I sort of try to give a variety of traits and instructions, and
Hmm.
as best I can, again, with the whole point of if we do these things, our children are more likely to be good citizens.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's
So,
no guarantee about anything in life, but it's the more we do positive things, the more likely we are to have a positive outcome.
yeah. I guess can you help walk us through a little bit more towards that citizenship? So what you're saying is that if we can learn to value and respect our children's thoughts, ideas, take that into account, invite them to share those, how does that then translate with their interactions with others and that whole bigger idea of citizenship?
Well, and I think a lot of it is tied into one of those 5 steps of community improvement is forgiveness.
Mhm.
If we can exercise forgiveness in an appropriate fashion, and again, sometimes forgiveness doesn't happen just like that.
Mhm.
Sometimes my father was an alcoholic and was verbally abusive to my mother. And he died early. There's still times when I don't forgive and I recognize I need to take a step back, but we need to do better with that. But if we can learn to practice personal forgiveness and exhibit that, but I think it's also important to understand the concept of social forgiveness, because that's a key point of citizenship. As groups, we need to understand what's going on. And a quick example, the American Medical Association years ago, decades ago, did not allow Black physicians
Mm.
in their organization. They subsequently allowed Black physicians, and they could have easily said, well, a lot of people say, well, it wasn't me, it was those old people back then, and they were evil. But they chose to have a public apology for what they did. recognizing it wasn't me, but it was us.
Mhm.
And I think that was us is an important thing to teach your children about society. Um, and again, if you go back to those 12 words, I am the problem, I am the solution, I am the resource, change the pronoun. We are the
We.
problem. We are
Mhm.
the solution. We are the resource. So if you can help your child in this journey with those 5 steps, learn to be the best parent you could be, get involved, stay involved, love for others, and forgiveness, I think you go a long way to sort of being that example of providing, of being the good citizen that you want your children to be also.
Yeah, and I know that we talked about, parenting in general, but, is happiness for children, is that like the goal of parenting or is it really something else?
Well, I think the is citizenship, positive citizenship,
Mhm.
and then that's the secondary benefit
Outcome.
of it.
Mhm.
And again, I that some people would criticize that. Oh, that's too simple, and in some ways it is, but it's a nice mantra to be thinking about because happiness, in some ways, is just the selfish pursuit of what I want. Um, unless whether you're a person of faith or not a person of faith, I think happiness and citizenship are much broader concepts uh, than just what I want in terms of this or that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm curious. I know that we talked about this book, but if other people watching this are curious, I know that you've written others as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about your other
Well,
um,
well, the
books?
first one really talks. I mean, the first one, My Children's Children: Raising Young
Mhm.
Citizens in the Age of Columbine, really expands on those 5 steps to community improvement. Has multiple examples of that, and is sort of a compilation, but not just thrown together, of those 12 years of writings. Um, Subsequent to that, it came up with an illustrated children's book. I call it Good Night Moon with a Message,
Oh.
because I didn't do the illustrations, beautifully illustrated, uh, but it's pictures of what families can do to make a difference in their community.
Mm.
Going to going to the senior center, going to the animal shelter, going to the military cemetery, eating dinner together, reading to your children with the TV off, uh, breastfeeding, congratulating your opponent in a little league game, whether you won or lost. Um, then I subsequently wrote a book. It was more of a scientific book with the American Academy of Pediatrics. Looks at early brain and child development and the sort of the science behind that, and then says, okay, that's nice. What does it mean?
Mhm.
What does it mean for parents, for doctors, for policymakers? And then now my children's children, or excuse me, now conscious parenting using the parental awareness threshold.
So if people want to see any of those books, and do you have a website, Dr. Saul? That
Yes,
Mhm.
mychildren'schildren.com. And I, and I
mychildren'schildren.com.
specifically chose my children's children because I wanted to celebrate my grandchildren. And when I
Oh.
wrote the book, I had no grandchildren. Now I have two. Um, The secondary one is my children's children, any children that I've cared for in the
Uh-huh.
course of my 40 plus years. And then my children's children, the third level is any children I've advocated for during my career. So pediatricians tend to be very paternalistic or maternalistic in terms of their patients, but I don't think we do it in a malicious way. We do it because we really want to treat everyone's children as we would our own, and so that's, to me, whatever I can do to have a positive impact in terms of children's advocacy, citizenship, and community improvement. That's where my head is at these days.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly with your leadership role with the South Carolina chapter, you're still doing it. You're still doing this work. Oh, well, it's such a pleasure to chat with you tonight, and I really appreciate you coming on again with me and doing another interview. I think everything that you talk about is, again, like I said, I think these are core common principles that was relevant when you wrote it and still relevant today. And again, I loved kind of reading your books and having this conversation with you tonight. So thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. This has been my pleasure.
Thank you. So, just wanted to introduce my guest for next week. So, I will be having Dr. Echo, who will talk with me about pediatrics, ADHD, and brain power. And then, if you have any other suggestions for other topics or guests that you'd like us to have on the show, please just reach out to me. Send me an email at drnarissa@letstalkkidshealth.org or drop me a message on any of the social media platforms. I always love to hear from you. And again, if you want to not miss any future episodes, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, or follow my blog Facebook page, Let's Talk Kids Health. So, again, thank you so much, Dr. Saul. It was a pleasure. And I guess that's it for now. We'll talk
Thank
again soon.
thank you.
Thank you.